Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to give this presentation. Unfortunately, I have to do the presentation in English and not in Russian because my Russia is still it's too long ago when I learned Russian in school. So excuse me for doing this in English, but I hope that you still find this valuable. What I'd like to talk about today is so the overall area we're dealing with at Rhebo is OT security, and OT here stands for operational technology. So that's the technology which you usually find in a factory or industrial environment. And we've built a technology that helps customers protecting these kind of OT environments. And the goal of my presentation is to give you an overview of our experience in starting our engagement with new customers, where we always have to, before we deploy our solution for a long-term run, we always have to convince our customers of the value of the product. And also, we usually have brownfield situations, so we install an in environments where you have a huge mix of different types of equipment from different times. And so there can always be security threats going on. And so you have to establish a ground zero, so a truth at the time of the installation so that you know what you're dealing with. And that's something we usually do in a POC. So a POC in this environment is, from our perspective, much more important than in classic IT security environments. And it also potentially provides more value to the customer if done correctly. So I mentioned that we talk about operational technology as opposed to IT technology. What we are currently observing is that these two technologies, that they converge and that they form something which is often called the industrial Internet of Things. And what's important here is that there are usually different goals for optimizing environments. So for classic IT technologies, it used to be privacy, reliability, and security, and sometimes also resilience, but it didn't have much focus. On the OT side, it was different. So resilience was always very important. Reliability is important. Safety is very important, but security is something which has been traditionally neglected. With the two growing together to form the industrial IoT, the requirements also diffuse, and this is what you see in the middle of this chart, that both resilience and security, they have become important optimization goals from a customer's perspective. So making sure that your machines are up and running all the time for an industrial environment, this is very important because this is how you make your money. So you can't afford a factory to fail, or you can't afford a blackout event for an electrical utility company. So resilience is very important, but also security is important because you have to make sure that your industrial IoT technology, your equipment is not hacked, because at the end, this would also threaten availability, reliability, and resilience of these systems. So first of all, how do you increase security and operational continuity, so stability of these industrial systems? And industrial ICS stands for industrial control systems. So this is the kind of IT equipment which you usually find in OT environments. So these are for instance, PLCs, IoT gateways, all sorts of controllers, robot controllers, sensors, actors. So how do you secure these environments? And of course, as usual, as always, this is not, the answer is not a simple tool. The answer is not even a single, let's say, a single strategy. What you have to combine is different types of measures, and it really starts with prevention and organization. So this is usually something which you establish in a company through standards and certifications like the ISO 27K. But this is not enough. You also have to make sure that you know how to react if there's something happening. So this needs to be planned, and it also needs to be trained. And quite often we don't have fire exercises in OT security. So this is something which we have to establish. Then on the right-hand side, there's threat intelligence. So if we get hacked, if we get attacked, we need to make sure that we have sufficient threat intelligence data to actually find out what happened in retrospect. So after an attack happened, we need to be able to take the data of the attack, analyze it, and first of all, make sure that we learn what happened. So what happened, what data was stolen, what was compromised, and also to make sure that this type of accident, this type of access, this type of incident cannot happen again. And then on the left-hand side, we need to make sure that we have capabilities, tools in place to make sure that we can detect any undesired activity. And this can be, of course, cyber attacks, but this can also be any sort of communication events which threaten the overall stability of an industrial control system. And that's really what we are targeting with our solution at Rhebo. So we've built something which we call automatic anomaly detection, which is a system which is using classic IT technology, deep packet inspection technology known from systems, threat detection systems, to analyze the communication in industrial control system. We basically decode all the communication. We learn in a second step how the
Klaus?
Yes. So my connection.
We don't see your presentation.
Yeah. Okay. My connection dropped. How long was the blackout?
Okay.
Okay. So for how long did you not hear me?
Yes, we see your presentation. We see your
okay,
screen. You can continue.
Okay, very good. Sorry for this. So we monitor the data, we analyze the data, we decode the complete communication, we put this into a learning algorithm to establish a baseline of the communication behavior, communication patterns. And then in the third step, we compare every new communication in an industrial control system against this baseline and to check if there's any change in behavior, any deviation. And any behavioral change we report as an anomaly. And to make it clearer what we mean by this, here are some standard examples of anomalies. So the simplest anomaly is on the right-hand side, a new network participant. This is really if there's a new system being connected to the OT network. And that's noteworthy because in an industrial environment, this usually doesn't happen. Different from an office environment where you quite often connect new systems to an environment. Here, it's really something which you need to act upon. Then on the left-hand side, new communication behavior, new communication patterns. This is when two nodes are already known, so we have seen them before, but they're talking to each other for the first time. That's a clear anomaly. Or on the right-hand side, new operations. So we're looking inside the exchange between two nodes. So they have been known in the system, they have communicated before, but so far they've only exchanged read informations, like reading some setting data from a machine. But suddenly there's a write operation or there's a firmware update operation. And this new operation is again a change from the learned behavior, and this is reported as an anomaly. So at the end, the goal is to detect any kind of unusual behavior in an industrial environment, which may point to a threat coming from a cyber attack or also coming from an operational instability, which at the end may threaten the operational continuity, operational stability of a machine. So now back to the topic to my presentation. An industrial POC, so a proof of concept of a solution and in an OT setting. What is important here? And before we understand what's important, I wanted to share a few observations from our experience, what is usually missing when we do POCs. So what we see with nearly all of our customers is that they have not done a proper risk analysis. So they haven't looked at their factories and their industrial environments and evaluated where they see how much risk and how much investment is worth protecting these particular risks. But this is a very important first step. Then based on this, you have to come up with a requirements definition. So how much and what kind of solutions do you want to implement to counter a certain risk that you have seen? With this, quite often we don't have a list of proper evaluation criteria. So what are the customers looking for? So what do they need and what don't they need? So these evaluation criteria lists, they're usually missing. And then what we quite often, what sometimes exists, sometimes doesn't, is a clear idea of the future operational procedures. So how do you implement the tools that you're procuring, and who's responsible for running them? So who's looking at the screens, and what are the operational procedures? Like if you see an anomaly message showing that there's an attack going on, who do you alert? Who do you call? What are the actions to be taken? And that's very important. And then the last point, what are your integration requirements? So what kind of monitoring systems do you have in place? What kind of alerting mechanisms? So you need to integrate with your existing infrastructure, because usually we don't want to implement standalone systems, but we want to tie it in closely with your workflow tools that you already have in place. So interfaces are very important. Instead, what we quite often see that customers are focusing too much on nice features, on eye candy, what the user interface is looking for, what you can do, but not so much on the day-to-day operational processes. And that's very important, and that's what we try to put into our POCs. Our POCs, they follow a standardized OT security lifecycle, which we try to establish with each of our customers. So with each customer, we always start with a risk analysis. That's based on an audit product, what we call our Rhebo Industry 4.0 Stability and Security Audit. And that's basically our approach to a POC, where we do a proper analysis of the customer's network. If we have done this, then we usually, in a second step, deploy our product in an operational way. And so we start continuously monitoring the system of our customers. And then we offer managed services to help them with this day-to-day operations of our system. So because this is our take to POC, let me spend a few more words on our Rhebo Industry 4.0 Stability and Security Audit. This is really what replaces a pilot installation or POC installation. So we always do this audit with our new customers. So it means deploying our system at an easily accessible location inside the customer network. Then we let it collect data for a period of 2 weeks. And then we do full analysis of the data which the system has collected. We put this into a written report, which is usually about 30 to 40 pages long. And then we do a one-day workshop with our customers discussing all the findings. And as we are in a brownfield situation, so we install in existing environments which have been installed for quite a long time, we always have a significant amount of findings. And so this workshop is always quite interesting for the customer. And then the system is fully trained. After the workshop, the system is fully trained to the specific environment of the customer, and then it can be seamlessly transferred into regular operation. So we usually just leave the system which we have deployed for the audit at the customer side, and then the customer decides to purchase the system, and then it can seamlessly start with day-to-day operation monitoring for anomalies. So back to the POC, what's our general recommendation? For the industry, there is a new standard coming up, which is the IEC 62443 standard. It's loosely based on the ISO 24027K standard, and it's a set of guidelines affecting things like policies and procedures, systems, but also components, and it covers all things security in an industrial environment. And our goal, our recommendation is to use this as a rough guideline, looking at the different chapters. And so to make sure that if you do your security assessment, that you don't forget anything, that you don't forget your systems, you don't forget a specific component, or you don't forget the people and the operation procedures. And this is very well covered by this standard. And by the way, we are running a number of webinars on the standard where we also present our experience from how we see the implementation at our customers. And of course, you're very welcome to look it up at our website and join one of these webinars. So part of the IEC 62443 specification are 7 foundational requirements. So these are security requirements for different areas. So for instance, you find data confidentiality, which is usually done by encrypting data. You also find system integrity, resource availability, so different requirements. And what we usually do during our POCs, during our audits, we map all our findings against these requirements. So where a customer meets or doesn't meet these specific requirements. So now I want to present you just a brief overview of examples of findings that we found at our industrial customers during these audits. And I will also point out which of these foundational requirements as of the IEC 62443 standard they relate to. So this is an overview of all of the assessments we have done over the past 2 years. And it's the relative occurrence of a specific event which we found in customers' networks. So I don't want to go through the entire list. I'm sure we can share the presentation, the slides afterwards for your reference, but just look at the top. So what we most often see is the use of unsanctioned protocols in an OT environment. So this is really typical. So just to give you an example, we have an OT environment with fixed IP addresses, and then we find a protocol like DHCP, basically issuing dynamic IP addresses. And although this is not insecure in itself, it can cause operational problems if you bring in external devices supporting DHCP as well, and then if they suddenly get assigned uncontrolled IP addresses. So this is something which we see very often. Then things like unsecure authentication, of course, potential malware, so that systems in the environments are already infected. What we very often see is vulnerable software, so all the Windows systems, Windows XP, Windows NT, being used for terminals, for HMIs in these environments. And you can go through the list, and it's very interesting to see for us as well how this looks at each new customer we are looking at. And just a few very specific examples. These are screenshots from our user interface. And this is basically a screenshot from the anomaly reporting screen. And here we see in red circle an anomaly being reported of a plain text password exchange. Of course, this is something which shouldn't happen. And so it raises an anomaly. And you see this is an FTP session. And during this FTP session, there's a plain text password exchange. So this is raised as a notification. And in our audit reports, we list this as a violation of the foundational requirement number 4, which is data confidentiality, that you should always transfer secure or important data in a cryptographically secured way. A second example is something much more serious. It's an ongoing attack. And in this specific instance, it's an attack with the WannaCry malware, which is an encryption malware, which is basically encrypting which is ransomware attack, which is encrypting the hard drive of the target. And we have seen this, we have observed this with a number of our industrial customers. And this is a screenshot of what's happening at one of our customers. And as you can see, the blue background traffic was Profinet communication. So this was in a production cell. So this is a real production environment. And suddenly there was a spike in SSL communication, and there was a lot of ICMP and SMB communication, clearly indicating that this is an ongoing attack, and deeper analysis with forensic data our system generates during these kind of events showed that this indeed is a WannaCry attack. And going back to these foundational requirements, this is of course a violation of the foundational requirement 3 system integrity. So much for this example. Maybe just a brief screenshot from the user interface as well. So the IEC 62443 standard also has a requirement or concept of zones and conduits, basically separating your environment into zones and conduits. And we are supporting this via network and asset monitoring functionality, where you can basically visualize all the assets, all the systems which are running in your factory and how they are connected and communicating to each other. So here it gets very specific. So this is an example of how we provide raw data for forensic analysis. So again, this is a screenshot of our anomaly screen. So any anomaly is basically listed here as a log message. And on the right-hand side, you can see that for each of these anomalies being raised, you can download a raw traffic capture for deeper analysis to find out what happens. Because our system would also raise an anomaly not only for known attacks, but also for unknown attacks. And here you don't have any existing signatures, so it's very important to be able to do a forensic analysis. So again, all the data I just showed you are real world data coming from our Rhebo Industry 4.0 stability and security audit. And we really invite all of our customers to run through this audit and do the entire process with us before implementing any security measures, including ours and others. So much for my presentation. I hope I didn't use too much time, and now I'm open to any questions which you might have. Thank you.
Klaus, thank you very much for your presentation. Now I check, are there any questions in the chat? No, we don't have any questions.